Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Pastoria Hydros going up against the Petalburg Razors. And as these two top 5 sides have a look at their opening hands, let's have a look at this tail of the tape, because as I said, they are both in the top 5. The Razors currently contesting for that top of the leaderboard, whereas the Pastoria Hydros sitting in 4th place are not safe in the top 5, and they need this victory to try and help move their own case up into victory road. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think's going to win this matchup. Will it be the water decks? Will it be the colorless decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And going first, it is going to be that Fast Days deck of the Razors with the Cyclozar in the active spot. They've got the Jigglypuff on the bench, and they do have those 2 Wigglytuffs. It's the Sea Guardians deck of the Hydros with the Piplup going into the active spot. They do have the Prinplup in hand, plus the Pokeball and the Professor's Research. And speaking of Professor's Research, that is exactly what the Razors have pulled, and they play that immediately to get an X-Speed and a Starly. Now, they do have a Staraptor in hand, so they're going to hope that they can get a Staravia as soon as possible. The potential power of that Pokemon, 130, as the Irida, the second Irida, has been pulled for the Hydros. They are going to play the Pokeball, they get the Manaphy, and they're going to play their own Professor's Research here, getting another 2 cards. They get the Giant Cape, they get the Empoleon. This is fantastic for them with that Aqua Jet. It can do 80 damage, but it can also target a Pokemon on the bench to do an additional 30, as they do just go for the Nap, which isn't going to do any damage, and normally if there is damage on the Piplup, it does restore its health. As the Staravia has been pulled for the Razors, they immediately do get that online, as well as the Wigglytuff with that Comforting Song that can restore 20 health from the active Pokemon. Now, the over acceleration from the Cyclozar does 20 damage, but in every turn following that one, consecutive turns, it does an additional 20 here, as the Hydros do pull their second Piplup as well. They can get the Prinplup online and start doing 30 damage to the Cyclozar as they're thinking about how they want to approach this. And that is exactly what they're going to do. They don't want to drop a point, so they're going on the offensive. They also put the Giant Cape onto the Prinplup, keeping in mind those Iridas are in hand that can restore 40 health from a Pokemon that has, from all Pokemon, sorry, that have taken damage and have a water energy on them on the side of the Hydros, and there's that 30 damage onto the Cyclozar, as the Barry has been pulled for the Razors as well. This can reduce the energy cost for the Staraptor to go with that Brave Bird, and as we said, 130 damage, and they're going with that Comforting Song. This will restore that 20 health from the Cyclozar. And they're playing the X-Speed, so they're going to retreat the Cyclozar, not giving up an energy to do so. They're going to move that Staraptor into the active spot. They want to use the Barry now. They don't want to have to contend with an Empoleon. This will take down that energy cost down to 1 for the Brave Bird, 130 damage, and that Prinplup has been wiped off the board. The Razors taking the early lead in this best of 3 series in Game 1, and as we always say, that Game 3 still counts toward the leaderboard regardless of the outcome of these first 2 matches. As the Piplup has been moved into the active spot for the Hydros, they do pull the Buizel as well, and they also move that Manaphy onto the bench. Now, Staraptor only has 1 energy on it. The Razors want to get another Barry if they want to go for another Brave Bird, and they are going to retreat the Piplup. It looks like they want to try and get that Empoleon, I have to imagine, into the active spot. They were willing to give up that energy to do so. The second Cyclozar has been pulled for the Razors, and a second energy onto Staraptor, and the Comforting Song is going to restore the 20 health that Staraptor gave up to go with that previous Brave Bird as well. They send it back over to the Hydros. They pull their Prinplup here, and they are immediately going to get that online, aiming still to get this Empoleon online with that Oceanic Gift. Manaphy can gift a water energy to 2 benched Pokemon, and there are currently only 2 benched Pokemon for the Hydros, so both the Buizel and the Prinplup are going to get an energy, but it comes back over to the Razors. They get their second Staraptor in hand, but their concern is getting this third energy onto their active Staraptor and another Brave Bird to wipe the Manaphy off the board. This Fast Days deck of the Petalburg Razors is in full control at the moment. 1 more point and they will take Game 1. And the Hydros do pull their Professors of Research. Now, they won't be able to get enough energy onto the Prinplup yet to go on the offensive. They pull their Floatzel and the Fion. The Floatzel with that Attack the Wound immediately coming online. It only requires 1 energy as well, but it cannot outlast a Brave Bird. And Empoleon is going to get its second energy. It still requires 3 though, as it comes back over to the Petalburg Razors. They get their Rocky Helmet. Now, again, they can go on the offensive with this Staraptor because it does have those 3 energy. We saw it just take the Manaphy off the board. They can go with the Comforting Song from the Wigglytuff, who just gets its first energy as well, and they've put the Rocky Helmet onto the Staraptor. That Comforting Song taking Staraptor back to full strength, and another Brave Bird, bringing Empoleon down to only 20 health remaining. This is terrible for the Hydros. They pull their second Manaphy. They're only able to play 1 Iridite in a turn as well. It is a supporter card. It will restore 40 health for the Empoleon, and they are starting to think about whether or not it is worth it here. I think they know, though, that there's not much they can do. They don't want to actually succumb to more from the Brave Bird. They're willing to take the Rocky Helmet damage. They're worried about the differential. That Rocky Helmet will take Empoleon off the board, but another Brave Bird would have done an additional 130 damage. So the Hydras trying to play the smart game. They want to take it to a game 3 now. And if you're enjoying what you're seeing as we're having a table reset, please leave a like, comment, help this series and channel grow for many more to come, as it is going to be that Hall of Origin deck from the Razors going first, having flipped heads. They've got the Porygon 2 in hand as they move their basic Porygon into the active spot with the Regigigas on the bench. It is the Regice from the Hydros Ice Peak Arena deck going into their active spot. And we know that Regice cannot succumb to the effects of moves, so it cannot be poisoned. As the Pokeball is going to be played, the second Porygon is pulled for the Petalburg Razors here, moving that into the active spot. There's not really too many effects that could take place in this Hall of Origin deck as they send it over to the Hydros, who pull their Professor's Research. They're aiming to get another 2 cards in hand here. They get their second Mamoswine, they get the Frost Rotom. They need the Swine up though, because they've got the Piloswine in hand as well. That Frosty Flattening can do 120 damage, but it does require 4 energy. As the Rocky Helmet is pulled for the Razors, they are going to get that onto the Porygon. They want to make this Regice reluctant to go with that Frost Smash that does 50 damage, and they're going to get the Porygon 2 online as well. It does do 30 damage with this Sharpen, so they'll be able to chip away at the Regice here. Very fitting considering it is made of ice as well, as it does come back over to the Hydros, who pull their second Regice. Still no Swinub in hand, but they do move that Regice onto the bench. They get a second energy onto the Regice. They're willing to take that Rocky Helmet recoil damage to get the 50 damage onto the Porygon 2, but the Razors have got the Porygon Z in hand. They've just pulled their Pokeball as well. Now the Porygon Z does require 3 energy. That is the only problem, as they do get that Arceus in hand thanks to the Pokeball. They immediately move it onto the bench. It does have that Power Blast, 4 energy for 100 damage, but they get the Porygon Z online. They're willing to let it take a turn of damage, and with that Buggy Beam, it can cause random energies to be generated in the energy zone for the Hydros, and they need those water type energies for this Ice Peak Arena deck, as that benched Regice does get its first energy. The Frost Smash continues, bringing the Porygon Z down to only 40 health remaining. The Regice also, with that Rocky Helmet damage, does get brought down to 40 health as well. They can finally get this Buggy Beam online from the Porygon Z, and they're trying to generate random energy in the energy zone. They take the Regice off the board, and it will be a Psychic Energy on the next turn, and this is crucial. This will keep the Porygon Z safe, because the Regice could take it off the board, but unfortunately it requires a second Water type energy, and there is a Psychic Energy being produced, but they do get the Rocky Helmet pulled, so they can try and get that recoil damage onto the Porygon Z, just like we saw happen to the Regice previously. And they do still choose to put that Psychic Energy onto the Regice. The Bidoof is pulled for the Razors after having just pulled that Bibarel as well, and they are going to get a first energy. They're thinking of where they actually want to place it. They were hovering over the Arceus, but they've moved to the Regigigas with that Raging Hammer capability as well, but that Buggy Beam will continue from the Porygon Z, bringing Regice down to 30 health. There's that Rocky Helmet coming into play, but the Metal Energy will be generated next for the Hydros. The Pokeball has been pulled. They're still hoping for that Swinub though, and it is going to be the Snorunt that gets pulled instead, and they do have the Frostlass in hand, who does only require 1 water energy, so they can capitalize on that Metal Energy, moving it onto the Snorunt here. And they do send it back over to the Razors whilst they continue to be unable to do anything with these multitude of types that have been generated in the energy zone. They get a second energy onto the Regigigas through the Razors, and they continue with the Buggy Beam to take the Regice off the board, but they're willing to drop the point because that Rocky Helmet recoil damage will take Porygon Z off the board as well. Both teams dropping a point, but for the Razors, one more point and they will lock up this series. The Hydros need to bring it back, getting the next 2 points to take it to that Game 3 decider. And we do see the Regigigas moved into the active spot for the Razors. It is the Snow Run, and they will be producing a Grass type energy on this turn, which is not what the Frostlass needs. It still needs one Water type energy. And they do opt to put the Grass type energy onto the Frost Rotom, and they are going to send it over to the Petalburg Razors. They still need to get 2 more energy onto the Regigigas. They get the Giant Cape, and that Raging Hammer does do additional damage, matching that damage that Regigigas has taken, but it's taken no additional damage yet. So this Raging Hammer will only do 50 damage to the Frostlass, but still waiting one more turn because they require that one more energy. But finally the Hydros have pulled the Swinub, and again that Mamoswine can do 120 damage, but that's not actually enough to take the Regigigas off the board, and it does require 4 energy. And the Hydros are left here to think about how they want to approach this. They're looking at the Piloswine, they're looking at the Mamoswine. 160 health is quite a number, but still, if they were to do 120 damage onto the Regigigas, that damage would also be included the next time that the Raging Hammer were to come. They're going to retreat the Frostlass though, they're going to move the Swinub into the active spot, they're going to play the Dawn. This will allow them to get that Grass type energy on the Frost Rotom up to the Swinub, because it does require, it can have one colorless energy, meaning it can be of any type. So they send it back over to the Petalburg Razors, who pull their Porygon 2. They've got another Porygon Z in hand, and that Porygon that's on the bench has now become a Porygon 2. But here it is, the Raging Hammer from the Regigigas. 50 damage onto the Swinub. It will have 10 health remaining. Giant Cape being pulled for the Hydros. They immediately are going to get that onto the Swinub. They're trying to buy themselves a bit of time here so they can go on the offensive against this Regigigas. All at the same time though, they will continue to take these Raging Hammers. Piloswine has 80 health remaining. It will get its second water energy, 3 energy that are required now onto it. It can go for the hammer and it would do 60 damage. But again, that would make the Raging Hammer do 110. The Pokemon Center Lady has been pulled for the Razors. The Porygon Z is once again online. It does get its first of 3 required energy. These Raging Hammers continue to do 50 damage from the Regigigas onto the Piloswine here, bringing it down to 30 health. They can finally get the Mamoswine online. A Frostlass has been pulled, but the Frosty Flattening will not do enough to take down the Regigigas here. They are just trying to maximize their damage, but the problem with that is that the Razors will be able to respond in kind. Regigigas brought down to having only 40 health remaining, but they are not concerned with that. This Raging Hammer is going to do 170 damage, wiping the Mamoswine off the board, and the Petalburg Razors have locked up this series as they are chasing that top of the leaderboard spot. But we will have our final table reset as we go into Game 3, and for this one the Hydros are trying to maximize their damage, maximize their points to offset what they've suffered from the Razors so far. And the Razors moving their Baneri from their Bombardment deck as they're going first into the active spot. It's the Tentacle from the Pacific Rim deck of the Hydros going into the active spot with that Palkia on the bench. But here we go, our Game 3, all for points, all for damage, as it is the Apom pulled for the Petalburg Razors. They've got a Pokeball in hand, they've got the Ambipom as well, and most of the cards in this deck do only require 1 energy. However, the Snorlax that is in there with that Collapse requires 4 energy, but we can see the Barrier in hand, similar to how it helped out the Staraptor, it can help out the Snorlax. They send it over to the Hydros, they do pull a Finneon, they play the Pokeball, they're going to get the second Finneon. Now they've got an Azumarill in hand, plus that Rocky Helmet. They get that 1 required energy onto the Tentacle and move one of the Finneons onto the bench. And there is that Rocky Helmet as well going onto the Tentacle, trying to make the Razors reluctant to go on the offensive, and the Rain Splash 10 damage onto the Baneri, bringing it down to 50 health. But the Razors, they pull their own Rocky Helmet as well. They're going to allow that to do even more damage. than what the Rain Splash does. If the Tentacle goes on the offensive, they get an energy onto the Baneri as well. It only does 10 damage with its own splash here, so it's going to do 10 damage to the Tentacle. It's going to take 20 recoil damage from that Rocky Helmet. They don't want the Hydros to pull the Tentacruel, and it is the Meryl. Fortunately for the Razors, not that they're aware, but that Meryl will be moved onto the bench, getting its first energy. The Azumarill requiring 2 energy, and the Rain Splash continues from Tentacle. 10 damage to the Baneri, 20 damage recoil for the Tentacle. Though if the Baneri goes on the offensive, it will be taken out, but the Lopunny has been pulled for the Petalburg Razors. They are immediately going to get that on the active spot with that jump kick that does do 20 damage. It can also do 20 damage to one of the benched Pokemon of this Pacific Rim deck. And the Ambipom gets its 1 required energy here as well. The Giant Cape being moved on to that Ambipom. And they go for this jump kick, which can again target one of the bench Pokemon, and they choose to go with the Meryl, probably enticed by the fact that there is an energy on that currently. There's the 20 recoil damage on to the Lopunny as the second Tentacle has been pulled by the Hydros. They need to think about how they want to approach this, because that Tentacle will be wiped out if it goes on the offensive. But instead they're going to retreat it. They move the Meryl into the active spot. They can put that Azumarill online with the Waterfall. It will be able to take the Lopunny off the board, doing 60 damage. It will take 20 recoil damage from the Rocky Helmet, and the Ambipom, with its double hit, it gets 2 coin flips. For each heads, they do 40 damage, so it can actually take off this Azumarill as well, but they need to get those coin flips, as the Razors currently have no bench either, but they do pull their Snorlax, and it will only require 2 energy before it can go on the offensive with that Barrier in hand. The Ambipom also coming online, but the Snorlax gets its first required energy, and the double hit, they need 2 heads. They get 1. They get 2. They're able to take the Azumarill off the board. The Petalburg Razors getting everything they need so far this series. They get their first point in this game 3 to match the Hydros here. The next 2 points can determine our winner, as the Hydros opt to go with the Finneon in the active spot, and they're going to finally pull the Tentacruel, but it is... I was going to say it's 1 turn too late, but it was the Azumarill that was taken off the board. Sorry, that Tentacle is still on the bench. But they are going to go with the Elegant Swim here from the Finneon, doing 10 damage to the Ambipom. But if they flip the heads and they're successful, this will prevent the Finneon from taking any damage or effects in the coming turn. The second Ambipom has been pulled for the Petalburg Razors. That means that Snorlax cannot go on the offensive on the Finneon. Neither can the Ambipom with those double hits. But this will not stop them from trying either way. They flip a tails, they flip 2 tails, so it never would have done anything in the first place, but again, it still does nothing. After that Elegant Swim, it comes back over to the Hydros, who do pull their Pokeball. They can get another basic Pokemon out of their deck, and you have to think it's going to be a Meryl or a Palkia, but it is the Meryl that is pulled, and the Tentacruel is online now as well. It can do 40 damage with its Wave Splash, but they're starting to set up that Palkia, so it can go for a Zone Smash here. There's another 10 damage onto the Ambipom. They're going for another coin flip, and this time they get the tails, which means that Finneon can be targeted by the Petalburg Razors. They pull their Professor's Research as well, but they're not worried about the Professor's Research. They're going to move the Snorlax into the active spot, retreating the Ambipom. They get its 3rd energy onto it, but again, that Barrier brings down the retreat cost of the Collapse. They are going to squish this poor Finneon and take it off the board with that Collapse. The Razors get their 2nd point, but Snorlax has fallen asleep. They will need to flip a heads for it to awaken. And the Hydros choosing to move the Palkia into the active spot. The Razors flip the heads, so the Snorlax is guaranteed to be awake by the time it gets back to them. The Hydros need to hope that something can go their way here. As they do pull the Azumarill, they're going to move the Meryl onto the bench. And there is a 2nd energy onto the Palkia. It still can't go on the offensive. That Zone Smash does 60 damage, but if they flip a heads, it does an additional 60. Now the Team Rocket Grunts have been pulled for the Razors, and that is what they're going to use. They want to get the energy off the Palkia. They need to flip the heads, but they flip a tails from the very start. That would have kept going as long as they continued to flip heads, and it would have removed energy from the Palkia. But regardless, they can go for the Collapse here from the Snorlax. 100 damage onto the Palkia, bringing it down to only 20 health. The Razors still wanting Snorlax to reawaken, though. They need to flip their heads, and again, already they have flipped their heads. They are on track for a clean sweep over the Hydros, who pull their second Palkia. They are limited on what they can do at the moment. They are going to move that second Palkia, though, onto the bench. It looks like they're going to take their time with this. They don't want to rush and potentially make an error. And they opt to get energy onto the Palkia. They're going to retreat the active Palkia, giving up those 2 energy to move the second Palkia into the active spot, who is at full strength. It can outlast the collapse, but the Razors pull their second barrier. That's kind of irrelevant now because they have enough required energy on the Snorlax. Now, going to move a single energy onto the Ambipom, the one and only that is required. They play the Professor's Research, they get a Baneri, they get the second Snorlax as well. And here comes the collapse. 100 damage onto the active Palkia, bringing that one down to 20 health as well. And once again, Snorlax is fast asleep. And this time they do flip the tails. They'll get another chance though before they come back to their turn, as the Hydros do pull the Giant Cape. They are going to get a second energy onto the active Palkia. They put the Giant Cape though onto the Azumarill. The Azumarill can outlast now a collapse from the Snorlax. But the Razors with their coin flip, and they get the heads. This is fantastic for this bombardment deck. They don't need to worry about the energy. They're just worried about going on the offensive. They are going to take the clean sweep over the Pastoria Hydros. This is nothing like we saw from the Razors in Season A1 when they took the Wooden Crown. This is a brand new team who are chasing victory road, and with this victory, they are on top of the leaderboard, as next round they are going up against the Levincia Wonders. Whereas for the Hydros, they're still hanging on in the top 5, but they are going up against the Olivine Raiders next round. But until then, Nidorinas, Nidorinos. Thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what card you thought was best. And if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.